What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Revival. My name is JJ, and it's time for another review. This time, Shining Force on the Sega Genesis. I do not have a physical copy of the game, but I do have the Sega Genesis Classic, or Sega Genesis Mini, and it was on there, so that's where I played it. And honestly, I hadn't broken this thing out yet, so it was the perfect chance to test this out while getting into a game that I have been wanting to play for a long time. So why don't we go ahead and get into the review. Ever since I first checked out Final Fantasy Tactics on the original Sony PlayStation, I've been incredibly fascinated by the depth and complexity that comes along with tactical RPGs. I began looking up games that came out prior that I had never gotten a chance to try, in order to see if I could find any that scratched that itch of wanting to learn more about existing ones in the genre. I had heard of plenty of them, but never looked deeper than the words in the title, Fire Emblem and Ogre Battle being some of the big ones. However, the name that I heard the most with regards to tactical RPGs was Shining Force. Spanning several console generations and a full army's worth of characters, I knew that one day I'd eventually have to check that series out. The problem is, though, that in my experience playing games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Growlancer Generations, tactical RPGs tend to be a massive time sink, and extremely unforgiving with regards to its battle system. You can be 40 minutes into a fight and then have everything fall apart, with your only option being left to start over and lose everything that you just worked on. Because of this, I have a habit of taking very long breaks between playing tactical RPGs, thus not really giving myself the opportunity very often to play these older games that I had missed. So I knew that I had to make my next tactical RPG one that was a classic, one that I had been putting off for way too long. And let me tell you, I am so very glad I did. Shining Force changed a lot of what I thought I knew about tactical RPGs, and even though it's extremely simplistic in its gameplay mechanics compared to games that came out after its initial release, I'm convinced this game was made for people like me, who worry about the things I listed earlier when playing games in the genre. Shining Force's story isn't really anything to write home about, although when it first was released I have no doubt that it still captured the imagination of many a gamer. It's not bad by any means, it's just been done many times over since then, so it's a little tougher to find the level of complexity that a lot of newer games strive to achieve. You play as Max, a young man who raises an army to try and stop an evil force from being resurrected and wreaking havoc across the land. Frankly, it was a breath of fresh air, because as I mentioned, I wasn't looking for anything super heavy anyway. It felt right in line with the fun and simplistic gameplay, and kept me engaged by its ever-expanding and incredibly diverse cast of characters. From elves to dwarves to monsters to cyborgs to dragons, the army that you build is really the driving force behind moving forward. Because Shining Force... As I said earlier, the gameplay is typically what keeps me from having shorter windows of time between playing tactical RPGs. However, Shining Force was the perfect game in the genre for someone like me. It's your standard move here, choose an ability, board game-like battle system that comes along with tactical RPGs, but without the insane amount of complexity that a lot of newer ones have that tend to make my head hurt after being in the same battle for a half hour or more. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying newer tactical RPGs aren't for me. I just mean that it was a nice change of pace and a pleasant surprise when I was going into this experience, thinking I was going to have to rack my brain thinking each move through so as to not mess up at the end and have to start over, losing all my progress in that fight. The game is forgiving, like really forgiving. There's no permadeath for characters, and if your main character dies, you do lose the battle, but your characters still keep all their experience gained up until that point in the fight, and then you can just start it over again. In fact, the game encourages you to do so by way of a spell that allows you to retreat. That's how you're able to grind for EXP. You'll go into a fight, go for as long as you're comfortable, and as long as your main character is still alive, you can simply use that spell, then start the battle fresh, stronger, and prepared to win. I died a handful of times, but because I didn't actually lose anything other than some money, which honestly wasn't hard to come by anyway, I never really was bothered by it and wanted to keep playing. Now that might sound like a turnoff to people who are looking for like a real challenge in their tactical RPGs, but honestly for me it was perfect because I didn't have to worry about stressing out about being 40 minutes into a fight, close to death, and then possibly losing everything that I had just gained up until that point. And I really wanted to move forward because the whole point was getting to see, you know, the next really cool looking character that was going to be coming up that joined my army. Speaking of cool looking characters, let's talk visuals. The aesthetics in this game are absolutely gorgeous. Right when I started the game up, I knew I was in for a treat to some wonderful eye candy. The world is vibrant and the character sprites are so detailed and unique that I almost felt like I was playing an early Suikoden prototype at times. The character portraits are beautiful and frankly made me want to search out a Shining Force art book at some point, just to appreciate the visuals more. The animations are flashy and match beautifully with the different backgrounds on each battlefield. Even just walking around your base and seeing all the individual characters all lined up or hanging out was a total visual feast. Complementing the game's visual style was the music. Most of the game's tracks fall right in line with the theme, an army marching to battle. Lighthearted while in towns and foreboding when evil lurks nearby, I couldn't help but feel like I was on a fun adventure the entire time, which I guess is technically the point. One gripe I did have with the sound was that when the screen would transition from the battle screen to the duel screen, where you would see the attack animations between characters, it would change the music every time, rather than just keeping the same song rolling throughout the entire battle. It got a little jarring at times because the main theme kept getting interrupted every few seconds by the smaller theme, and then go right back to the main theme a few seconds later. Not a deal breaker by any means, but it definitely was noticeable and made the music feel needlessly repetitive at times. So, all in all, honestly, especially if you've never played a tactical RPG, I highly recommend Shining Force. It's one of those where, while yes, the graphics typically probably don't age very well, I think they're so colorful and so beautiful to look at that it's really not like they don't look like garbage, if that makes sense. They still look like they're still very pleasant to look at. So I really enjoyed it. If you've never played a tactical RPG, this is a great introductory one to get into. I'm not entirely sure as far as later games in the series if they get more complex and that kind of stuff. If they don't, that might be a turnoff to some people, but for me personally, honestly, it's refreshing just because again, as I've said several times, I just worry about being so far into a fight and then losing the risk, having that risk of losing everything after I've been playing for so long. Lost progress is just so, it's just such a big turnoff to me. I do not like that. But again, it might not be for everybody. But I really did enjoy my time with Shining Force, and I honestly cannot wait to get into more games in the series. Especially, I've got 2 on one of the other collections, the Sega collections that I've got, and I've got 3 on the American release. I think 3 actually released in several parts in Japan, and I think we got 1 of them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've got that on Sega Saturn as well. So definitely looking forward to getting into those at some point. Really enjoyed my time with it, and I couldn't have asked for a better re-entry into the tactical RPG genre, because again, I dread getting into those. I love them, and I think they're really fun because they're so deep as far as the gameplay goes. This one was just simple enough for me personally to where it felt like it was exactly what I needed to ease my mind a bit on the genre itself. But I totally understand if you're looking for something more complex. You know, this is not Final Fantasy Tactics. This is a much simplified version. And I also will say, while I love the amount of characters and the diversity, I do not like how you get so many of them so late in the game. Like, you continue to get characters as the game moves forward. And so I really didn't use a lot of the later game characters simply because I had already built up the other ones that I had been playing with throughout the entire game. So it was still cool to see them in the base, but they didn't get a lot of use. It'd be interesting to maybe do like a second playthrough or something later on and focus more on the later characters, you know, if that's something I want to do at some point. Tell me what your thoughts are. And honestly, I don't know much about like the other games that I know are in this, like Shining the Holy Ark and a few of the other side ones that are, well, this might be a side one for all I know. I really don't know much about the Shining series at all, but now that I've played this, I definitely would like to know more. So what game in the series should I play next? Should I move on to Shining Force 2? Is there something else that I should try that takes place in between or takes place before, or should I play first, or, you know, whatever. I want to know more because I genuinely enjoyed my time with it. I found it intriguing. I found it just right. It was that baby bear bowl of porridge that I needed. Just right for me. That was a weird analogy for a video game, but I totally enjoyed it, and I'm super excited to get the other ones in the series. And I've rambled on for quite a bit now, so yeah, tell me your thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's up? Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You know the drill. You've been to YouTube before. And as always, keep on gaming.